The Bills and the Dolphins. This one's in Buffalo, divisional opponent, obviously. Short week for both of these teams. We already have Ed Oliver and Matt Milano ruled out for this game. Josh Allen's going to play, but it's reported that he might be wearing a visor for the first time, given the fact that he took a little sucker punch from Michael Clemens to the nose and busted his nose last week. He obviously was able to finish the game, and the Bills were able to beat the Jets pretty handily. The Dolphins are 0-2. They looked a lot more competitive last week against the Patriots than they did against the Indianapolis Colts to start the season. Dalton, where do you want to start this conversation here previewing these two divisional opponents?
Yeah, I've mentioned before in the review show that the Dolphins' offensive line, to me, especially you talk about injuries, we're starting right out with it here. The injuries to the right side of their offensive line to Austin Jackson and James Daniels, they're both going to be out for a while. It's a struggle for them to do much of anything when it comes to the run game or Tua having to hold the ball beyond that 2.5-second mark. And right now, what it's coming down to is the Dolphins' offense, they need Tua to be perfect and make perfect throws to Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, working the screen game with Devon Achane too, but so often against the Buffalo Bills in his career, he has been far from perfect. In fact, he only has 2 games in his career with at least a 70 passing grade against the Bills. Buffalo is really kind of the house of horrors for this Miami team. Only a 59.9 passing grade there for Tua in his career against Buffalo. 10 big-time throws, 13 turnover-worthy plays. So, look, I think right now for this for this Dolphins offense to function, he has to be darn near perfect. The ball has to come out on time. It has to be perfectly accurate. And we've seen through the first 2 weeks, there has been some poor decision-making. When he gets late in the play, there's not much ability to improvise. He has to be absolutely spot on in this game, especially with Oliver out. That's an opportunity, although the Bills D-line played really well last week against a better Jets offensive line. Matt Milano being out and Joe Andreessen being in his stead is going to be a big factor. They should want to attack the middle of the field, but even with the Bills hurt, these two high safety looks that they're always given the Dolphins to look at, they're preventing those deep shots. So Tua's really going to have to be perfect, I think, especially over the middle of the field for the Dolphins to win this game.
Yeah, you talk about a couple of the guys that are out there. The Dolphins, for as much as a lot of people focus on the passing game with Mike McDaniel, like when they're at their best, obviously they're running the football, which is what we're going to talk about with a couple of teams here, and they just really haven't been able to do it. Yeah, Devon Achane played well last week against the Patriots, and he was a major factor, but it was more in the receiving game. He had 10 targets, 8 receptions, 92 yards in that touchdown in the receiving game, and in the rushing game, 11 attempts, 30 rushing yards for just a 2.7 yards per carry average. So this Dolphins team is just not able to figure it out on the ground, and with Milano out and with Ed Oliver out, maybe it's an opportunity for them to get it going on the ground. And really, I'm going to flip sides, and I'm going to say that it's really just got to get going in general. Dalton, the whole point of having an offense that you call a Ferrari, right, with all of this speed is, one of the benefits of having a fast car like that is the acceleration, right? It's a 0 to 60. It's able to hit the ground running, and immediately you're full speed and you're putting it on these teams. Well, the Dolphins aren't that. They're not a Ferrari. They're a Fred Flintstone vehicle where they're like foot powered over here. Because when you look at the Dolphins in the first quarter starting these games, they're one of the worst teams in the NFL. They've got a negative 0.393 EPA per play, which is 30th in the NFL in the first quarter, and also just a 42.8 offensive grade. That's dead last. They have the worst offensive grade in the first quarter of any team in the NFL through 2 weeks. And it's a major reason why it's totally throwing off everything they do, because then they're just in recovery mode through the rest of the game. Now, to go to the Bills side of this, they have the 6th highest EPA per play in the first quarter right out of the gate. This is a team that often imposes their will on exactly what they want to do in the game. And obviously they had a big one to start the season against the Ravens. It was a little bit easier against the New York Jets, but still being able to come out and execute that first scripted drive is very important. But then even after that, do you get an extra drive in the first quarter? And it just has not gone well for the Miami Dolphins, and it's gone very well for the Buffalo Bills. So I am afraid for the Dolphins that if they once again get behind on the scoreboard early, if they have another slow start, well, that just plays into exactly what the Bills want to do as a team that ran the ball really well last week. And it will force Miami to probably abandon the run game sooner than they want to. They're not able to stay balanced. And then, like you said, it's a lot more onto his shoulders and how he is going to attack this Buffalo Bills secondary. So to me, if the Bills get up 7-10 nothing at the end of the first quarter, it's just going to be such a mountain for the Dolphins to be able to come back and beat them in this game. They have to start faster than they have this season.
Yeah, and their defensive line, I think, is in the spotlight this week too, because one, if you don't stop the run, we saw it last week with the Jets-Bills game. If you give this Bills team a two-way go and they can run the football with James Cook and Ray Davis and even Josh Allen too, then you have a serious problem with them being two-dimensional. And look, both quarterbacks the Dolphins have played, Daniel Jones and Drake May, they've both looked extremely comfortable in the pocket, and they've made every throw that they've needed to. This is a much more talented Dolphins defensive line than they've shown the first 2 weeks. They have to play better in this game against a very solid Bills O-line to have a chance to win it.